Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Kolhapur Institute of Technologies, College of Engineering Autonomous Kolhapur, I take this opportunity to welcome today's speaker and resource person, Ms. Ashwini Mavin Kurve, faculty members, students, alumni, and invitee members for a webinar on the why, what, and how of sustainability, organized under Reconnect, a student alumni dialogue initiative phase 2. Now I will introduce today's speaker and resource person, Ms. Ashwini Mavin Kurve, who is currently working in the cross-functional field of sustainability and environment. She has completed MTech in civil engineering with specialization in environmental engineering from VJTI Mumbai in July 2016. She did her graduation in environmental engineering from KIT's College of Engineering Kolhapur in 2014. She is currently associated with Tata Motors Limited as a senior manager corporate sustainability and working in the areas of value chain sustainability, sustainability performance and initiatives, sustainability disclosures and reporting. She was previously associated with KPMG Sustainability Services and extensively worked in the areas of business responsibility reporting, sustainability reporting, strategy and assurance, and integrated reporting. She has also been involved in assignments pertaining to green bonds, sustainable supply chains, integrated audits. In the first 6 months of her association with KPMG, she was bestowed with the Rising Star for exemplary performance. In 2018, she was awarded with the Encore Kudos Award. At KPMG on a variety of interests that include reading, dancing, writing, learning new languages, traveling, and connecting with new people from diverse backgrounds. She has published over 25 articles related to life skills on LinkedIn and her personal blog. We are privileged to have you here as an eminent speaker, Ms. Ashwini, and on behalf of department, institute, and all participants, I welcome Ms. Ashwini Mavin Kurve and I thank her for accepting our invitation. Now I would request her to start with her presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for such a lovely introduction. Good morning to everyone. It is actually a very glad moment for me to be back connecting with all of you. Though it is online, I would have been more happy to, actually come to KIT and conduct this session live. But nevertheless, connecting with all of you all is great. So the topic that I have chosen today is sustainability, the why, what, and how. Okay, the reason why I have divided this into three parts is because as a part of our curriculum, we haven't been introduced to something called sustainability, right? Yet. So I'd spoken to Akshay sir and he had mentioned that we are in process of actually coming up with syllabus for sustainability. But still, since we don't have it till now, I will take you through what sustainability is. And I'm going to try and make it as interactive as possible. That becomes a little restricted saying since it's online, but let's see how we can go ahead. So there are three sections basically, which I'm going to be discussing. One is I'm going to set the context of the presentation, in which I'm going to talk about why sustainability is the need of the hour, what we don't know about sustainability yet. So I'm going to be talking about those aspects as well. Like I'm going to decode sustainability for you. And what are the actions that we are taking at global and national level for sustainable development? So that's going to be section A, this part. Going ahead, I'm going to talk about corporate sustainability. So what exactly does sustainability mean to a business? Or how does a corporate incorporate these things into their business practices? What are the cornerstones of corporate sustainability? Something that you will probably learn only once you get, start working. So those aspects I'm going to start, kind of introduce you to them, because that will give you a good head start in terms of what to expect when you get into a career of sustainability. And then we are going to talk about one of the most important pillars of sustainability, which is sustainability reporting. Now, let me tell you, there are different aspects of sustainability, okay? Like just like Sir just mentioned about me working in the space of sustainable supply chains. So that is another big aspect, but that's going to be a topic for another time. It's going to take a lot of time for me to, explain that. So I'm going to focus on one of the important topics, which is sustainability reporting, and which is mostly common across all sectors and all organizations. So no matter where you go, so whether you're working for an FMCG company or for an automotive company or a finance sector company, sustainability reporting is going to be constant across all of these. That's the reason I've chosen this as one of my introductory topics today. And see, getting started, I think this is going to be the most relevant topic for all the students that are planning to take up sustainability as their career. So in this, I'm going to be talking about what typical roles and responsibilities a sustainability professional holds, and how can you get started on your journey. Now, how you can get started is something that is inspired from my own journey. Me being an environmental engineer, and my specialization again, MTech also in environmental engineering, I had to actually go out of my way to learn different things about sustainability. And I'm going to give you like an introduction to how you can start on that journey, which is why it is going to be important for you. So in the meantime, if you have notes, you can actually use the chat box to write those things down, and I'll take them up either at the end of the session, or if it's something related to the presentation, you can take it up during the presentation as well. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah. So the title of the slide, I've kept it as Are We Sleepwalking into Crisis? Yeah, so there is this organization called the World Economic Forum, which conducts a risk assessment across the globe. Okay, it considers different stakeholders. Just park this term stakeholders at the back of your brain. I'm going to be discussing what a stakeholder is once we get there. So just consider, like, just keep this in mind. Stakeholders are different individuals, the different kinds of individuals, say farmers, business people, people from, say, NGOs. So different people come together to form a multi-stakeholder group. So if you can see something mentioned here, multi-stakeholders. Okay, so World Economic Forum globally considered, this carries out its study every year to chalk out top 10 risks and the impacts of those risks. So impact wise, if you see, these are the top 10 risks that face us as a world, in the next 10 years. Now, if you see here, you will not see economic, economic crisis as one of the, top 10 risks. And as a matter of fact, we are going through an economic crisis right now, right? They are saying this is the next recession after 2008. Different to economy. So we are actually going through it. Why do you think economy doesn't feature here? Also, one more thing that will surprise you as an environmental engineer is, why does water crisis feature as a societal risk and not an environmental risk? Yeah. Now, if you give it a little thought, you will understand that the crisis in terms of quality or quantity is going to have social impacts, health impacts, agricultural impacts, which means livelihoods of a lot of population, especially in a country like India, will be impacted. Correct? So though this comes across as an environmental risk, it has a lot of social implications, and that's exactly why they have placed it under societal risks. The reason why I have specifically put this image out here is because I want you to understand no impact across the environment or social are independent. They are all linked together. Every environmental impact will have a social impact, and some of the social impacts will have some environmental impacts as well. So let's go through each of these. Climate action failure. I think it's quite evident the way governments and institutions are looking at climate change and the lack of seriousness that we have. This does feature as top 10 risks, no doubt about that. Weapons of mass destruction. So maybe bioweapons or war weapons. We were, on the verge of having a war. There was a discussion going on that we may have another war happening, World War III happening. So that is one of the risks that have been posed. Biodiversity loss. I think this is something that we all know, especially as environmental engineers. Extreme weather conditions. Yes. Water crisis. We just had a detailed discussion on this. information infrastructure breakdown. So I'm not sure if you've heard of these different news that comes up, right? The Paytm fraud maybe, or cases related to these information leaks, information security threats. So some of the companies, I think in 2016-17, there was this virus that had affected a lot of companies' intranet. Yeah. And that's where a lot of information leakage happened. Something that we did not expect probably 20 years ago are risks we are actually looking at in the next 10 years. Natural disasters. We've seen so many natural disasters happen in the last 1 year. Again, cyber attacks. I think cyber attacks, something that we are all, very prone to. The amount of net banking that we all conduct, the kind of dependence we have on the internet. Cyber attacks are going to be very common in the future. We have already started experiencing those. Human-made environmental disasters. Again, something that we've been seeing, wildfires, forest fires, infectious diseases. We are actually living through an infectious disease zone right now, like a pandemic that we have. And the scientists are predicting a lot more of these happening in the future. So why have I put this slide again? The reason is, if we keep focusing only on the financial well-being of a company and ignore these other signs, which are spread across different kinds, not just environment. There is geopolitical risk, there is societal risk, there is technological risk. If we do not take all of these into consideration, we are going to be faced with even more crises in the future, which is ultimately going to impact the business and how the business performs. Yeah. Okay. I am assuming that a lot of you all will be aware of this term, the Earth Overshoot Day. So still, let me give you a gist of what it is. So say there is one Earth, there are resources for one Earth available. Okay. Now, an overshoot happens when you finish off those resources before the time is over. For example, say there was an X amount of resources to be used till December 2020, but I used them up almost by August 2022, which means I have overshot my consumption, right? So since 1970 to 2020, this post-industrialization, that is, this Earth Overshoot Day calculations have been done. And if you see this graph, we started here and today we are here. Now, thankfully, due to the pandemic, unfortunately or fortunately, our Earth Overshoot Day got delayed compared to last year to August 22 this year. And that has nothing to do with how responsible we have become as a society. It only goes to say that when we are not actually doing anything, this can happen. So once we go back to business as usual scenario, this is again going to go back to maybe July. So here we had almost reached July 29th, right? So that was one of the aspects. Yeah. Okay. So this is coming to some societal aspects that I'm talking about, social risks or social, what do you say, impacts. In the world's poorest countries, around 1 in 4 children are engaged in child labor. According to the International Labour Organization, more than 450 million people work in supply chain related jobs. Now, you may be wondering, why am I suddenly talking about this in a topic related to sustainability? Because sustainability goes beyond just the environment. Also, let me tell you one thing. There is no such term called environmental sustainability. Okay. Environment is one of the aspects of sustainability. Sustainability as a whole doesn't need any prefix to it. Okay. So if you read here, in supply chain related jobs, this is what is important to you when you go into an organization. Now, throughout this presentation, I want you to stop thinking as a student and change your mentality to a person who is working in a corporate organization. Okay. Now, before I get into this, I want to tell you what a supply chain is. Say you are a manufacturing company. Let's take an example of Tata Motors only. Okay, you are a manufacturing company who's into manufacturing a car. Okay. Now, you are not going to be manufacturing everything at Tata Motors. It is practically impossible to have that kind of infrastructure and resources to do all of that in your premises. So what you will be doing is you'll be outsourcing some of your work and some of your raw materials to a supplier. Okay. Now some of your suppliers will be very large, say SKF or some other big MNC supplier, which has all the systems in place to check whether their employees are above 18 or not, whether they are ensuring proper labor conditions or not. But some of your suppliers will be very small. They'll be actually working out of a shed. Okay. So in these situations, it becomes your responsibility as an organization, as Tata Motors, to ensure that your supply chain is free of any kind of human right violation. And child labor, as you may be knowing, is a human right violation. That's why I have taken this slide. So around 1 in 4 children are engaged in child labor in the world's poorest countries, and 450 million people work in supply chain related jobs, which means even if you're working for one of the best companies, your last tier, now tier is how, I'll tell you what tier means. Say you have Tata Motors, you have a supplier who's supplying to your operations. Now again, your supplier may have more suppliers and they may have even more suppliers. So it is impossible for you to reach to the last tier of your supply chain. And that last tier poses a risk of a human right violation. That's why I've taken this slide. So this girl is Carolina. This girl is a 16-year-old girl from north of Carolina. And what she's saying is, she's been working in this tobacco field for the last 4 years, okay, since she was 12. What she's saying is, I don't feel any different in the fields than when I was 12. I still get headaches and my stomach hurts. And like I feel nauseous, I just feel like my stomach is like rumbling around. I feel like I'm going to throw up. So do you remember what you were doing at the age of 16? Now imagine another 16-year-old girl in the tobacco field doing this. Now there are children involved in even worse jobs. Okay. Say for example, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, they employ child labor in mines. And even for an adult, those conditions are very inhuman to stay in. So imagine what it would be for a child. Yeah, so a lot of organizations are entitled to submit a Form SD. Okay, it's a declaration that we do not source anything from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So these are the kind of declarations that organizations are expected to give. That's why I have put this slide here. Yeah, I'm going to introduce you to one more concept: tangible and intangible assets. Okay. Now, say 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we did not have Amazon, Flipkart. Yeah. So we did not have a lot of e-commerce and online stuff. Forget about just Amazon and Flipkart. Imagine how many businesses went online during the pandemic. Yeah. So tangible assets are assets such as your warehouses, your manufacturing plants, your research and development centers. These are tangible assets. And intangible assets are your human capital. Human capital means your employees, your intellectual capital, which means your, innovation and all of that. Now, if you see, in 1975, the tangible assets were 17%. The importance of tangible assets was 17%, intangible assets was 17% and tangible assets was 83%. And look at that reverse in 2015. If probably we get numbers for 2020, this will go even, it will get even bigger, I feel. So your intangible assets will be weighing more, having more value than your tangible assets. What it means is not just on paper, you can see it around you. The value of a physical asset is comparatively lesser than the value of intellect or innovation or technology disruptions. So many technology disruptions happened over the years, and companies that couldn't stay up or keep up with those changes had to drop out. Right? For example, there was this time when Motorola had like one of the biggest market shares in the mobile industry. And where are they now? So there are so many different examples. You can just Google and find them online. Companies that couldn't stay up with technological disruptions or disruptions in their industry and had to back out from the business. So there are so many. I think there was this Kodak also. Kodak was also one of those. Yes, correct. Mr. Abhay Singh has responded. Kodak is one of those. Nokia, correct. Yeah, so these are a lot of different examples of companies who couldn't keep up with changes and had to back out. Now, do you think this is an aspect of sustainability, business sustainability? Yes, because what is sustainability? It is the ability to sustain. So you have to get out of the mindset of just restricting it to environmental aspects and have a big holistic picture to this. Yeah. Yes. So now we come to sustainability, the triple bottom line approach. So bottom line for any company is how it performs economically, right? Usually a bottom line for a company is how it has done in that particular year in terms of its financial performance. But this is exactly where we change our outlook. Sustainability focuses on meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. This is a typical Brundtland definition of sustainability. But let's have a look at this. So the reason why this is outlined is because every company does business with the intention of this. You will not find any company owning up and saying, no, we don't want to do business for profit. We want to do business because we want to do good for the society. There's going to be absolutely no one. Societal benefit or environmental benefit may be one of the byproducts of their business. Focus is this. And this is exactly where businesses fail in the long term. Yeah. If you see now, only the companies who had taken into consideration giving work from home for their employees, giving flexible timings for their employees are the ones who have sustained through this pandemic. Only when they thought of their employees as important stakeholders in their business was sustained through the pandemic. And all those who couldn't had struggles with this aspect, right? So for example, this is people and this is planet. Okay? So when I say people, I just mentioned about employees, even suppliers, the ones that take their suppliers along with them in developing their products or maybe in bringing them at par as far as their environmental performance or their, social performance is concerned, only sustain in the long term. Otherwise, what happens is you may not get a certain part when you're required to have it during a production process, and you will be lagging behind your competitors. That happens so many times in a manufacturing setup. Again, planet. Say you are setting up your facility in a place that has water scarcity. There is a big example of Coca-Cola. They were driven out of one of their plants by the society because they were extracting groundwater that was meant for domestic consumption. You know, right? Beverages take require a lot of water, because of which they had dug up wells in the village, which deprived the local citizens from water. So again, environmental aspects which will cost them social licensing to operate. So these are aspects that a company has to take into consideration to sustain in the long term. Now let me tell you something. This time that we are in right now is the best time to be an environmental or a sustainability professional. The reason is, going forward, no organization will be able to function without having experts in this domain. And not just experts, you need to have the kind of passion to actually make that difference. So if you are pursuing this course and if you are really, really into it, this is good news for you. There will be opportunities. You can create your own opportunities in terms of starting your own consulting firm or joining a startup and helping it grow. I'm pretty sure all of you all have a very bright future. Yeah. So now when I talk about sustainable development, we just can't be talking, right? There are some action points also that need to be taken. So across the globe, different organizations and institutions and governments have taken initiatives with respect to sustainability. So sustainable development goals Niti Aayog's implementation of those goals. So there is a document. If you go online and just Google Niti Aayog's report on sustainable development goals for India, you will actually get a report of which state is performing how on each of these goals. So there are 17 goals and 169 targets under each of these goals. And governments across the globe are working on meeting them. By 2030, there are certain goals that you need to meet. Yeah, even organizations, like for example, my own organization works on these goals. So different organizations have taken up different goals that are relevant to them, and they are working on those. So all of these 17 may or may not be applicable to you based on your sector, but some will be applicable. So you pick those up and set your own goals and achieve them. Then in terms of technology, again, Digital India is something that we've been looking at. Skill India, Make in India, okay, Swachh Bharat, National Health Mission, COP25. I'm sure all of you all know about this. Conference of Parties, INDCs. This is Intentional Nationally Determined Contributions for GHG emission reduction, and RE100. RE100 is actually a forum where companies actually vouch to going, to completely shifting to renewable energy 100% by a certain year. I think it's 2030 or 2040. I'm not very sure. But yeah, my organization is a signatory to this, and there are a lot of different organizations which are signatory to this. So these are the actions, some of the actions. There are a lot more actions being taken. But these are some of the actions being taken on the national and global level. Now let's dive deeper. What does the sustainability mean for a corporate? Yeah. So corporate sustainability is an approach to create long-term stakeholder value. Long-term stakeholder value through the implementation of a business strategy that focuses on the following dimensions of doing business. Now, if you see, there are a few words that have been highlighted and made bold. Long-term stakeholder value and business strategy. Now, what I mean by long-term in the sense, you just don't think about probably if I take this decision, to ek saal mein mujhe profit milega. If you do that, you're going to face a loss. There are high chances that you will face a loss in the next 10, 20 years. Timeline. So a long-term approach is very important. And stakeholder value. Now, what those stakeholders are, I will get back to you in a bit. Yeah, and through implementation of business strategy. Now, how a business works. So when I say strategy, right from the CEO, MD to the lowest person in the organization should be aware of the importance. First of all, they should be aware of what sustainability is. And second of all, what is the importance of implementing sustainable practices. So we're talking about 5 pillars here. 5 pillars again, which can be broken into the earlier 3 pillars. So 1, 2, 3. Blue. Sorry. So sorry, just a moment. Yeah. Yes. So this blue, green, and yellow can be clubbed. Sorry, blue, pink, and yellow can be clubbed under social. Green is again environmental, and this is economic. So when I say ethical, I'm talking about ensuring there is no corruption, there is no fraud, there is transparency in how a company does business. In the recent past, we have seen a lot of companies, go bankrupt. A lot of banks go bankrupt as a result of fraudulent practices. I don't need to take the names. We've all been glued to our screens and to the newspapers to see what they are. Social, again, I think I've discussed this at length. Human rights, labor conditions, your supply chain, all of that comes under social. Environmental. This, I don't think you guys need any kind of introduction to environmental. We've been studying this, throughout our curriculum. Cultural. Now, cultural, when I say, I talk about the indigenous people's rights. So say, for example, you're setting up your factory or your operations in an area which is tribal. So it is important for you as an organization to ensure that you uphold the culture of that particular, community. You do not in any way disrespect that community. And another thing that I also think of when I say cultural is, say, for example, Reliance, I'm not sure if it was Reliance or some other company, but they were setting up their they have set up their facility somewhere where the Varli paintings are very famous. So those tribals are into Varli painting. What the company did as a part of their CSR initiatives is they encourage these local tribal individuals to, produce a lot of these paintings, and they help them sell it. So it was also a contribution to the livelihood. That is where this culture comes into picture. And economy, again, I don't think we need to explain the economic aspect to any of the business people, right? Again, now sustainability is here to say who are companies' key stakeholders. So who do you think are companies' key stakeholders? Are they employees, customers, investors and shareholders, community, lawmakers and regulatory authorities, government and local governance bodies, media, or suppliers and vendors? So in your chat box, just tell me, who do you think are companies' key stakeholders among these? Okay. Mr. Abhay Singh says investors. Okay. Anyone else? There can be more than employees. Okay. Okay. Let me have some more responses before I can give away the final answer. Don't you think customers are important? Yeah, someone said customers. Management team, government bodies. Okay. Nobody thinks suppliers are important, or media is important, or lawmakers are important. Okay. So let me give away the definition of the stakeholder, and then you come back to me telling me which do you think are important stakeholders. Okay. So stakeholders are individuals or group that may impact or could be impacted by the company's business activities. So any group of individuals who can be impacted by what the company does, or who have the ability to impact how a company performs. Suppliers are primary stakeholders. Okay. Some more? After this definition, I want you all to be able to tell me. Correct. Absolutely right. All of these are key stakeholders. Okay. So why are they key stakeholders? Let us look at each one of them and then discuss each one of them. So your employees. Definitely employees are key stakeholders. Imagine everybody goes on a strike and there is no production happening. How is the company going to function? Right? Customers definitely are key stakeholders. Right. Demand of the product. Okay, correct. So customers, if there is no customer, who are you going to actually sell your product to? Or who are you going to give your services to? Right? So they are also important. Investors and shareholders. Of course, who's going to invest in your business if there are no investors or shareholders? So again, they are important. Community. Your business does impact a community. Say you're setting up a big power plant and you're going to be displacing tens of thousands of people from their homes. You are going to be impacting a community too, right? Also, if those people decide to kind of not give you a social license to operate, which means they go on a strike, they vandalize your manufacturing setup, they go to the court, pull you to the court, things like that happen, again, your business is going to be impacted as well. So community is again important. Lawmakers and regulatory authorities, definitely they are important. So let's talk in terms of the regulatory authorities that we are aware of as environmental professionals. CPCB, MPCB, yeah. Imagine they are not happy with the kind of treatment that you're giving to your effluent, or the way of managing your waste. They can create havoc to your business, right? They can give you a closure order, they can give you a closure order, and they can give you a show cause notice. So that's one big deal. Government and local governance bodies, definitely. So you need, factory license. You need a factory. Government and local bodies are important. Say you have something to do with BMC, or a body that gives you water. Say you're sourcing from a municipal source of water. Say MIDC, say you're sourcing your water. So these are local governance bodies. So these are also important. Media. Okay. So today's world, we all know what is going on. Media plays a very important role in a lot of aspects. If there is no responsible reporting of what you are doing, a single report can tarnish your image, right? Whether what is being said about your company is true or not, the media plays a very important role in building the reputation of your company or destroying it. So, a media is a key stakeholder. Unless you go out and give an explanation or a press release saying that so and so was false news, the media can continue to spread those things about you. Again, the media can also have a positive impact. One good news about how well you are performing or how you are contributing to, maybe your through your CSR activities. CSR is corporate social responsibility activities. You're in the highlight, and suddenly your shareholding pattern also improves. Suddenly the way people look at you also improves. Suddenly your customers also want to buy more from you. They play an important role. And suppliers and vendors again. So business continuity depends on this group, and this group. If they decide not to work, it's going to be difficult. So I hope you have some clarity now in terms of what a stakeholder is and why it is important in terms of sustainability. These stakeholders need to be taken care of when you talk about corporate sustainability. Only when you are able to, of course, reasonably satisfy the requirements of these stakeholders will you be able to sustain as a company. Okay. Now I'm taking it to another very important topic which forms the basis of corporate sustainability. It is materiality, defining the materiality. Okay. Now, what is materiality? For any organization to start on their sustainability journey, it is very important for them to know what is important for them. They cannot go around working in all the areas. They cannot have initiatives in different areas because it's trending. They have to take up topics and initiatives and strategic decisions in the areas that are important for them as an industry and as an organization. So, just what I said now, I'm going to read this out. An organization is faced with wide range of topics on which it can report. Okay, relevant topics which potentially merit inclusion in the report are those that can be reasonably considered important for reflecting the organization's economic, environmental, and social impacts. In this context, impact refers to the effect of an organization has on the economy, environment, and or the society. So positive or negative impact. Now here you may have seen the word reporting a lot. We will talk about that later. But what I'm trying to tell you is, say you are a manufacturing company. I'm so sorry. Now, if you're a manufacturing company, your product efficiency, your manufacturing efficiency is going to be important to you. But the same thing is not going to be applicable to a service sector because they are into servicing and they don't have, services, and they don't have what you call manufacturing related challenges. Just give me 1 minute. I'm going to have some water. Okay. So what is the process for materiality assessment? So you need to define the scope. For example, there are a lot of companies in India that have presence outside also, right? So you need to define the scope of whether you want to work as a company, you want to focus this year on your initiatives for India only, or you want to extend it to the other countries also. So based on where you are, those things will also change. Your initiatives will also change because what the kind of mentality or the kind of environment that we have in India may not be the same as some other country. Okay? So now what you do is you identify potential topics or bucket of topics. Now, when I say topics, it could be right from water management to employee development, any of these, based on what is important for you as a company. What you do then is you categorize these under the 3 pillars of sustainability. 3 pillars are economic, environmental, and social. You consult with the key stakeholders to shortlist the material topics. Now, who are your key stakeholders here? All of those that we discussed in the previous section. Now, for example, say you are working in an area where, or you are an organization that does not need a supply chain. It is going to be very rare that you are completely functioning on your own. But say you're a small organization which does everything within your premises, like the cradle to grave pura process jo hai, it happens within your premises. Then maybe your supplier is not a key stakeholder for you. So whoever is your key stakeholders, you take your shortlisted materiality list to them and help them make it even shorter for you. And then in consultation with your senior management, which means the CEO, MD, the chairman of the company, you sit down with them and finalize material topics. By the end of this presentation, if I have time, I'll open one report maybe and I'll show you an example of material topics that a company can pick. But for now, just keep these in mind. Now, what can these material topics be? Say, for example, like I said, water management can be one of those, energy efficiency, human rights and supply chain can be one of your topics. Maybe something related to information security, safety, health, and environment. So environment is already covered, but safety of, your permanent and temporary employees, health management, all these things become material topics for a company based on their industry, their location of operation, their nature of operation. All of these different things will decide what is material for a particular company. Okay. Now, once you know your stakeholders and then you have a materiality assessment done, you can go ahead and start with your reporting journey. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, the reason why I'm talking about reporting so much is because that is primarily a function in all the organizations. So sustainability reporting is an overview of a company's economic, environmental, and social performance. This kind of reporting can help organizations measure, understand, and communicate their economic, environmental, and social governance performance, and then set goals and manage change more effectively. Now, why do you have to, first of all, understand why do you have to write a sustainability report? Is it going to be just like any other report? Is anyone going to read it? Let me be very honest with you. If you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said sustainability reporting is something that very, well-to-do organizations do, and probably nobody reads it because it's a 200, 300-page report. Okay. But now the scenario is changing. Different stakeholders, including your investors, read a sustainability report. Why do they read it? Because there is an organization called UNPRI, okay, which is about responsible investment, which binds the investors to invest responsibly in companies. So all of this is linked. Now, what do investors look at? They look at how you are managing your carbon emissions, how you are managing your energy, how you're, managing your resources, including energy, water, and other resources. What doing to ensure that your employees have a balanced life, or how are you ensuring that they have growth opportunities? What are you doing to ensure that there are no governance related violations? There is no harassment at workplace. There is no, employment of child labor or forced labor. How are you managing your suppliers? All of this is assessed by investors. I have personally had these calls with investors who are investing in Tata Motors. They send across a questionnaire where they ask you to disclose on this, and they ask you where have you put it in the public domain. The public domain is the internet or the website of the company. They ask you for these things. Then they have a call with you. They try to understand what were the challenges because of which you couldn't report on those things. What is your action plan in the future? That's why this is important, to measure, understand, and communicate, because what you cannot measure, you cannot change. For example, let's take your safety performance. Okay. There has been a fatality in the last 3 years. Okay. I just saw a question, what criteria do the investors use? So there is no criteria as such. So some of the, okay, I will be telling you about that soon. I'm sorry, I didn't register your name, but I saw the question. So I will be coming to that. I'm going to be coming to some reporting frameworks. In that, I'll point out which are investor driven also. Okay. But a lot of investors do not really have a criteria as such, but I just mentioned a few things, right? Your environmental performance, how you're dealing with your employees. These are the criterias. But what is the question that they ask? Those questionnaires are going to be varying according to each investor. Though there is one standard questionnaire, which I will be talking about when I come to that slide. Yeah. Okay, so I was talking about safety. Saurabh Gaikwad. Okay, yeah. So safety, so say there were 5 fatalities in 2012. Okay, when you measure this and you put it in your sustainability report that we had 5 fatalities in 2012, you become binding to also write why those happened and what is the action plan that you have taken so that those 5 reduce to 4 and ultimately you have 0 fatalities. Fatalities is death at workplace, okay? Due to an accident, when a death occurs at workplace, it is called a fatality. Similarly, say your GHG emissions, I'm pretty sure you're aware of scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. So you're reporting on these for the last 3 years. It is expected and it is appreciated if you report on trends. Okay. So say 2015, 16, 17, you report on your GHG emissions. Say there has been increase in production. That's why your GHG emissions has also increased. You give a reason of why it has increased and what are you doing to decouple the emissions from your production numbers, which means what I mean by decoupling is you have to completely make your operations so efficient and what do you say, include processes and alternatives in place so that even though your production number increases, your emissions should not increase. They should be independent. So what are you doing in the long term? What are you doing in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? What is your plan? How is your management looking at it? All of this is supposed to be put in the sustainability report. Now, this information is used as input by investors and different stakeholders. So now there are studies which say that employees also go through the sustainability report of companies and prefer working with companies that are really sustainable, because these are the only companies that will survive in the end. Okay, so different also customers also. So maybe if you have a major customer, say you're not business to customer, B2C business, you're actually giving it to another business who's going to be propagating it to your maybe your final consumers. Then those people are also going to read your report to know how you are managing all of these risks and managing all of these different aspects of sustainability. Okay. Yeah, and then set goals and manage change more effectively. So based on your report, you get to know where you are standing as an organization, based on which you can set goals and then take actions. And now, what are the benefits? One, increased understanding of risks and opportunities. So not just risks. When you do this materiality assessment and you do the stakeholder engagement, you not just come across risks for business, you also come across opportunities. So probably when you interact with your stakeholders, you may come across a problem that your stakeholder group is facing, and maybe as an organization, through your product or service, you may be able to provide a solution which can be scaled up to a business again. So there is an opportunity for growth, right? Innovation for growth and for innovation. Second, enhanced linkage between financial and non-financial performance. Now, as a sustainability professional, something that we've been struggling with for years is to make our management understand that non-financial performance is as important as financial performance. So some of the very advanced organizations in the world, I don't think India is still there, but countries in Europe and organizations in probably not even in the US, but yeah, Europe mostly, are able to quantify the impacts of environmental performance and environmental risks. Yeah, natural capital evaluation, they call it, and social capital evaluation, on the basis of which they can tell you what is going to be the benefit or what is going to be the loss if a certain non-financial risk is not considered. I'm going to give you a very simple example which will be understandable by all of you all. Say energy efficiency. Okay, say you have installed energy efficient appliances, and you have measured your bills, right, before and after. So when you didn't have installations and once you installed, you will see the financial benefit in the long term, right? It's called return on investment. This is something that will help the management make a decision to invest in more sustainable solutions. So a sustainability report helps you with that. It helps you enhance the linkage between the financial and the non-financial performance. Third, influence on long-term management strategy and policy and business plans. Now I'm going to take an example of, so there was this company, a very famous IT company, which was not addressing sexual harassment at workplace. Okay. So we were working with them as consultants. What they were doing is they had numbers. Every year they would report on sexual harassment. Numbers would be there, but they would be kept confidential. Now the reason is, because it affects the reputation of a company, right? But these things cannot be hidden. The reason is there will always be a media report which will come out and probably accuse a company of promoting something, or more than promoting, of not taking action or not showing intolerance towards something like this, right? That's why we had advised them to start reporting it in their report. And we said, don't just report it. You write that you are taking the responsibility of what has happened, and you are also taking the responsibility to make a change, which means you are going to implement the prevention of sexual harassment policy. Of course, now it is compulsory for every company to have a prevention of sexual harassment policy. This was when they didn't have it, and it was not compulsory. So now it is very much important for a company to have a posh policy, a posh committee, and regular meetings to avoid such kind of instances. So then they started reporting, and the way stakeholders started respecting them, because they took the accountability of what was happening, and also the numbers started to decrease. When you start reporting on this thing, everybody in the organization becomes accountable for what is going in the report. And when everybody becomes accountable, they are answerable for everything that happens. So automatically everyone takes the responsibility of every good and bad thing that happens, and things start to change. Again, next is enhanced compliance. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. Everybody studied EIA, right? Everyone knows about environmental clearance. Everybody knows that every year you're supposed to file an environmental, report before 30th of September, that we have to file. So everybody has to do it. You need to have a license to this consent to operate and consent to establish. But let me tell you, there are a lot of small companies that do not have basic compliances in place, and they go unnoticed as well. Okay. But for a company which is doing a sustainability report, it is going over and above compliance. So they are definitely complying by the minimum requirement. Yeah. Which means their effluent is managed properly, which means their waste is managed properly. So they're going over and above compliance, which means they are giving over and above the minimum wage requirement to their employees. So you definitely ensure enhanced compliance. Comparability of performance internally and between organization and sectors. Now, I'm going to be very honest again. For the biggest motivation for a lot of companies to adopt sustainability practices is to actually see that their competitors are not going ahead of them. Yeah. So for example, say you get into sustainable packaging. You are an FMCG company, you're into maybe foods, and you get into more sustainable packaging. You have a competitive advantage over your peers, correct? You are definitely going to boast it. You're going to put it in a sustainability report. You're going to also mention about what kind of impacts you have avoided because of your shift to sustainable packaging, or whether you're taking the end product responsibility and how are you managing that. So it makes comparability of performance internally and between organizations, also between plants. When I say internally, between plants, say you have 8 plants and you are taking an environmental data or the sustainability data for all these plants, and you put that up on a dashboard every year, definitely each plant feels motivated to do better than the other one. So there is healthy competition, and overall there is supposed to be a growth in the sustainable practices. Improved reputation and brand loyalty. We just spoke about this. So if your brand is giving a tick mark on all of these good practices, definitely your impression becomes better in front of your stakeholders, all your stakeholders, and you gain brand loyalty. Enabling external stakeholders to understand the organization's true value and its tangible and intangible assets. So this is also something that we've covered through our discussion. What is an organization's true value? What are its mission, vision, and vision statement, and how are they doing things to stand by those? Yeah, these are the benefits. This is something about sustainability reporting that I wanted to tell you. Now, what are the different reporting platforms? Yes. Okay. There are some more also, but we'll be restricting to this. The first is business responsibility report. Now I'm going to ask you this question. You have to just answer yes or no in your in the chat box. Have you heard of these frameworks? Have you heard of business responsibility report? Have you heard of GRI, Global Reporting Initiative? Have you heard of integrated report? Have you heard of CDP, Dow Jones Sustainability Index? Have you ever heard of these? No. Okay. Okay. Great. So let me tell you. So you may be aware of National Stock Exchange and all of this, right? And Bombay Stock Exchange, NSE and BSE, right? So there are some companies which are listed on these based on their market capitalization. Basically, on the basis of how rich these companies are, they are listed on the NSE and the BSE. Okay. Now what has happened is SEBI, which is Securities Exchange Board of India, has mandated the top 1,000 companies to publish a business responsibility report, this report, every year as a part of their annual report. Okay. So say, for example, I will be coming to Dow Jones very soon. But right now I'm talking about business responsibility report. So in India, this is only for India. Business responsibility report is only for India. The companies that are listed on the NSE and BSE have to mandatorily report on the non-financial performance as a part of their annual report. Now, what comes under this business responsibility report? That I'll tell you. So there are 9 principles, okay? 9 principles related to governance, sustainable procurement, employee well-being, stakeholder. Then there is human rights. There is environmental, environmental protection. 7th is advocacy and lobbying. 8th is community development, and 9th is product responsibility. So these are the items on which the company has to report if they are listed on the top 500 listed companies. This is a mandatory reporting for the top 1,000. It was 500. It has recently got extended to 1,000 companies. Okay. So this is one reporting framework which you will find on the net. So what I want you to do after today's session, whenever you have time, is go online and maybe you can just pick up Tata Motors, or you can pick up any other company. Infosys will be there in the top 500. There'll be so many good companies. All the good companies will be listed on the top 500, top 1,000 companies, 1,000 ka list. Go through their annual reports. You will find, just do control find and find business responsibility report and go through those reports. Okay, there are questions under each of these principles that the company has to respond to. Saying that, for example, let's say governance hai. So it will ask you, do you have a policy in place to ensure that there is no corruption and bribery? So if you have a policy, you say yes, you give the link of the policy. Then it asks you how many cases have been reported with respect to violation of ethics maybe. So then you say, okay, so many complaints were received, so many were resolved. So they have a questionnaire which you have to respond to. Okay, that is business responsibility reporting. Second is GRI. Now let me tell you, as this was my starting point. The GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, was my starting point. And I still think it's the Bible for you to start your understanding of sustainability reporting. This is a very comprehensive framework. It's a guideline actually. Now it is GRI standards. Earlier it was GRI guidelines. Now it is standards where more than 400, 450 different aspects are there related to. Yes, I'll be coming to that as well. Sustainability report. So there were two things. One was Dow Jones and one is sustainability report. I'll talk about both of these. Yeah, so most of the reports in the public domain are GRI reports. Okay, GRI is a global standard and it is one of the most respected standards that are followed by companies and something you should look up on the internet. You will get everything, like everything. Also, they have sector specific disclosures. Say, for example, you are from the aviation industry. There will be a special supplement to the GRI normal standards for the aviation industry. For automotive, there will be specifically that. Maybe there are some 5-6 sectors for which specific things are also available, specific disclosures. You can have a look at them as well. Then integrated reporting. Now, this is the newest thing in town. I think Mr. Thorvat also mentioned about this. Sorry, that I have been working on this in the space of. Sorry. Not sure what just happened. Yeah. So integrated reporting is a reporting framework which actually gives an opportunity to bring together the financial and non-financial reporting. So here it is based on the 6 capitals principle. Okay, the capitals are in financial capital, human capital, intellectual capital, manufacturing capital, social and relationship capital, and I'm missing out on one. Which one did I say? Financial, human, social relationship, manufacturing, intellectual, and there's one more capital which I will let you know soon. I mean, it's just there, but I may have just missed it out somewhere. Yeah, and then is Dow Jones Sustainability Index. You're right. So Dow Jones is a what do you say, rating agency which rates companies based on their performance, and a lot of investors look up to Dow Jones Sustainability Index's report for making investment related decisions. Okay, so they have a separate questionnaire. We just submitted it for our organization on 30th of July. So what again they do is they have a very detailed questionnaire. It's an online questionnaire. You have to fill it real time and you have to give links to the disclosures. So that is that. And a lot of what do you say, investors actually look up to the Dow Jones feedback. And CDP. So CDP is Climate Disclosure Project. Carbon Disclosure Project. It was called Carbon Disclosure Project. Now it is called simply CDP. So this again is specifically for climate related information. So all that you're doing with respect to your carbon emissions, new products that you've launched, keeping in mind carbon emission reduction. What are your low carbon products, like I just mentioned? What is the strategy that your company is taking to mitigate carbon related crisis? So all of that, right from governance to implementation, is covered under CDP. Yeah, the next question that someone had asked was about sustainability report. Anybody, not just a customer, anybody, you, me, anyone has access to the sustainability report of the company. All you have to do is say you're interested in Nestle's sustainability report. You just Google Nestle, you go to their website. Most times it will be available in the investors section. Yeah, investors, you go down, there'll be some disclosures and their sustainability report will be there. Now, one thing I need to tell you about is a lot of companies are moving away from just sustainability reporting, that is from here, to integrated reporting. Okay, so there'll be an integrated report where they will have an index, GRI index, Global Reporting Initiative Index, where they'll be mapping all the requirements of GRI in the IR itself. So if you don't get the sustainability report for a particular particular organization, try looking for its integrated report. I hope this was useful and helpful, this particular bit, because this is something that I wish I knew as a student, or I wish I was aware of before I started working? Okay, yeah. Yeah, the sixth capital that I was missing was natural capital, okay, in the IR. So financial, manufactured, social and relationship, human capital, natural capital, and intellectual capital. Okay, you don't need to write any of these down. All of this is available in the public domain. You just type business responsibility report. You will get the format from SEBI. You will get different examples on the web. You write GRI, you will get the entire document on the on your web page, and you will get different reports also. Similarly, integrated report also, it is the integrated report is a 37-page document. I am almost like I've by hearted it because I was working extensively on this for different clients at KPMG. Now Dow Jones and Sustainability Indexes, I don't think that will be available publicly because it is available only to the companies who are applying, and similar cases with CDP. But you will get a lot of information related to these in the public domain. So you can get an idea of what exactly these disclosure platforms cover. Okay. Just a minute. Now, this section is going to be the most important for all of you all. So if you remember, I had mentioned you need to walk out from the student mentality to the business mentality right now, right? For this session. So this is why I was saying it. Now, what are the roles and responsibilities of a sustainability professional? Now, the responsibilities usually include capacity building and awareness among various departments. Let me tell you, whether you're going as an environmental engineer in the environment department, or you're going as a sustainability professional in the sustainability department, or as in the safety department, one challenge that you will face is convincing and building the capacities and awareness among other departments. I'm going to be very open about this. If you remember, all the other students from different departments, from say mechanical, ENTC, find it very difficult to understand what environmental engineering is. What exactly are you doing? Like, are you just planting trees? That is the usual, usual outlook that people have towards environment, sustainability. But no, we know we are designing wastewater treatment plants, we are designing water treatment plants, we are designing air pollution control equipment. We know all of these things. Until we do not build the capacities of different people in different departments, we will not be able to get them on board for our sustainability initiatives, especially the management here, because the management is going to provide funding for all the initiatives that you're going to implement, right? So that is something that we do. Okay, again, these responsibilities are based on what I have been, I have gathered over my years of experience. Yeah. So next is development and revision of policies, systems, and protocols related to sustainability. Now, when I say sustainability, there are different aspects, right? From climate change policies to human rights policies to, prevention of sexual harassment, as we mentioned, those policies. All of this come under the purview of sustainability, and that's the beauty of this field. You are not just restricted to what you have learned as an engineer. You get an exposure to all these different things, and you can still link it back to what you've learned. Okay. Next is responding to all all sustainability disclosures applicable. So we just saw a few disclosures ahead, right? So those 5 are the main disclosures every company does. Most of the company do basically. So your responsibility as a sustainability professional will be to understand those disclosures, the requirement of those disclosures, connect with different departments to get their inputs, and respond to these disclosures. Yeah. Next is data compilation, analysis, trend analysis, and presentation to the board. So every board will have a meeting every quarter. Some of them have every month also, but most of them will be having it every quarter, where you have to present what is the trend of the performance. How are you doing? How is your initiative? So for example, I said, no, we are working with the suppliers. So we have a sustainable supply chain initiative going on. So as a part of this, how many suppliers have we covered? How many were found to be non-compliant? What action have we taken to make them compliant? What are the different initiatives we have encouraged them to take up, say renewable energy installation? What have we done? What are the outcomes of that? Okay. Next is implementing sustainability initiatives across the business and supply chain and the value chain. So I just mentioned about that. One thing I would like to clear here, value chain. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between the supply chain and the value chain? Is it the same or are they different? Anyone? Okay. Okay. So I'm not received any responses. So I'm assuming you are a little confused, different, right? Can you write down what is exactly different? Why they are different? Okay. So I will tell you why they are different. Say you are I'm going to give you an example of something like an automotive industry only because I've been working in that industry. So now I've cleared what a supply chain is, right? Supply chain is somebody who gives you your input, who gives you your raw materials or some parts which you put in your final product. Now, as Tata Motors, I'm not going to go and sell my vehicle to each customer, correct? I am going to be giving it to a certain number of dealerships. So my dealerships are going to be the downstream of my value chain. So say there is a manufacturing setup in the center and there is a supply chain to the left and your downstream chain to the right. So this entire stream is called your value chain. Okay. So that is why I mentioned that implementing sustainability initiatives across business and the value chain. So we are also working with our dealerships to implement sustainability across their functions as well. Next is responding to investor queries and presenting to external and internal stakeholders. So responding to investor queries also I discussed some time ago. So investors send you questionnaires, they ask you pointed questions about what exactly you're doing for certain different aspects that are important according to them and which they consider are maybe a risk to our business. Okay. So say, for example, one of my plants is operating in a water scarce area. So they will ask me, are you planning to move to another place? Or if you're planning to stay in the same place, what is your, what are the measures you're taking so that you don't deplete the water for other stakeholders and don't deplete it for yourself also so that you're able to sustain for a long term. So what is your plan? So these are the questions that your investors ask and you need to respond to them as a representative of the sustainability team. Next, identifying and responding to changing external environment that can impact business. So any changes in the external environment. I'll give you a simple example. These reporting frameworks that we just spoke about. This BRR, Business Responsibility Report, is undergoing a change right now. Okay. They're trying to convert that into a BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. Okay. So this is a change that is external. So I, as an individual, have to work on making my company ready for this change, or say some technological breakthrough that's happening. As a company, it is my responsibility to ensure that we are ready for that change happening. Yeah. So identifying and responding to changing external environment that can impact business. Now let me tell you one thing. The most important thing that here you will need is you have to coordinate with different departments. You are not going to have an expertise in everything. Like technology and the technical aspects of the business may not be your forte. So as a sustainability professional, it is your responsibility to connect with these people, understand, bring them and maybe the external agency on one platform and facilitate that change. Yeah. So the best thing about being in this field is you are always learning. Always, because there will always be change happening. We are living in a very dynamic environment. There will always be change happening and you will be forced to, get through those changes. And in that process, you will learn a lot. Now, what are the skills that you need? These are the basic skills I'm talking about. You need to have strong data analytical skills. Okay. You need to have oral communication skills, written communication skills, PowerPoint presentation skills, in-depth knowledge about the various aspects of sustainability. Now, see, I'm going to tell you something. a lot of sustainability professionals are not necessarily environmental engineers. Okay, they come from a background of ENTC, mechanical, some of them are not even engineers. So they have to start from the scratch to understand what this is. In case they have not done an MBA in sustainability, they have to start from scratch. But an advantage that we have as environmental engineers is one pillar of the three pillars is very strong for us. The environment pillar is very strong for us. We know the technicalities very well. We can interact with the plant environment team to understand why there was fouling in the anaerobic digester. We understand these terms. So it becomes easy for us to just capture the other pillar, which is the social pillar, and bring those together. Yeah. And the last is staying abreast with the changes and developments in the sector and implementing them at the organization. So, say your competitor or your peer is doing something, very has taken up a very nice initiative which you think can be scaled up at your organization as well. So, you interact with them. You have an opportunity to interact with your peers at various forums. Okay, throughout the year. So this year there has been less interaction because of the COVID situation, but otherwise there will be conferences happening and sessions happening where you will have an opportunity to present what you are doing. There'll be functional cross company training happening. So as an industry, you can grow together. Yeah. And now, how will you get started on your journey? So first of all, you need to understand the basic of sustainability from open sources. The internet is an amazing place to start. Okay. Second, start by reading sustainability reports of listed Fortune 500 companies. They are available in the public domain. So this should not be an excuse. Oh my God, where do I get it? I don't know. You just Google and you'll get everything. All these reports are available in the public domain. Okay? Go through thought leadership reports by rating agencies and consulting firms like EY, Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, and more. So I was working with one of these big four firms, which is KPMG. So we used to develop a lot of thought leaderships. Now these thought leaderships are developed by conducting surveys. Okay, we would conduct surveys with different organizations having a proper sample size, and then we would come up with the thought leadership. Please ignore the fourth point. It is the same as the third point. I think it got duplicated. Sorry for that. Yeah, keep an open mind and go out of your way to enroll for courses on Coursera, Udemy, edX, and other online platforms. So there are a lot of different courses available, okay? Or in the topic of your interest. Maybe if human rights is your topic of interest or you think you need to know more about it, there will be courses available on that as well. Or maybe if you want to do a basic course on sustainability, that will also be available. So when you do this, there will be some paid courses, some free courses. So start with the free ones. If you find it useful, only then go for the paid ones. Similarly, there are some courses, training programs organized by these firms that we just spoke about, and CII also, Confederation of Indian Industries. So CII has very reasonably, charged, training programs. Now I think they may have gone online also. So you can read them up and you can probably enroll for one of those. Again, I have absolutely no personal this with any of these tie-ups with any of these. So it's not a marketing, gimmick. It's just for me. I mean, I'm just trying to give you information on where you can find these sources. Okay. So CII, these firms, any of them, they offer certified courses which have value. So you can go through these courses. They are 1 or 2 day courses or sometimes 3-day courses also, where they give you activities so you thoroughly understand each one of them. Then a very important thing you should do by now, if you haven't already done it, create an account on LinkedIn and connect with individuals in this field. Join various groups that discuss and post about this topic. So there are a lot of groups across LinkedIn, and this forum has a lot of groups for different topics, and people keep posting a lot of write-ups and articles related to sustainability. So connect with them and find out more. Feel free to approach experts for mentorship and guidance to go ahead. Yeah, there is a way to approach these mentors as well. I have an article written, a mentorship 101 on LinkedIn. Yes. So there is an article on LinkedIn. I have written about it because I had received this question from a lot of people. How do you approach people for mentorship? So if you go to my account on LinkedIn, there is a article called Mentorship 101. In that, I have mentioned what are the do's and don'ts while you approach someone for mentorship. And I'm pretty sure if you approach them the right way, people will be willing to help you. Yeah. And last but not the least, seek internship opportunities and learn on the job. Never stop upgrading yourself. Okay. That being said, something that I want to tell you offline is if you are a student who's in the second, third, last year or pursuing their MTech, always have an identity beyond your studies. Always engage in other activities of your interest, no matter where you go in life, no matter how you do in your career. Even if you're very busy, take time out to do things that you like. So, for example, if you like playing football, basketball, if you like dancing, painting, don't give that up, because no matter what you say, these things contribute to your skill set. Okay. And in times that are so stressful, they will keep you afloat. So always have something else to do. So I'm pretty sure my teachers who are listening to me speak right now will remember me from college. I used to be a part of so many things and I really used to enjoy those things, and they have helped me today as well. You know, they will help you when you get into your career. It will help you multitask. In fact, multitask is the wrong word to say. Multitask is when you do too many things at one time. It will help you manage time properly. So invest your time in learning these skills as well. Okay. So all the best and thank you so much for having me. I am open to questions now. Yes, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can have questions. I hope this was a helpful session for you all. I had a lot of fun interacting with all of you all. Your questions were really nice. I'm open to more questions.
Thank you very much, Ashwini, for such a nice, informative, and thoughtful presentation. It was really a great presentation, and definitely all the participants will be benefited from all the details and information which you have shared in this presentation. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for having me.
Now the forum is open for discussion. Participants, if you have any questions, you can post your questions in chat box.
Hello, sir. Yes. So actually, you guys are very lucky. You have the same set of teachers that I had when I was studying, and they've been very helpful to me as well. I'm sure you must also be experiencing the same thing. Also, I want to thank all of you all for actually organizing these kind of sessions, because we get a chance to give back and also interact with the existing pool of students. Yeah, if I want to know about packaging materials, if any organization is using for its food products, will company give me that information? Okay, so see, now if you go to a company's, yeah, let's say Hindustan Lever or Nestle India. So mostly, no, this should be answered in the in the sustainability report of the organization. Okay, if you go to the sustainability report, there is a particular section called product responsibility. As a part of that, they will be talking about how they are managing their packaging, what have they done to reduce packaging waste. In case that is not mentioned, there will be an email ID in the report itself where you can write to them and they are supposed to respond to you as a customer. So you can definitely connect with them if it is not available in the report. But I would suggest you first check their report out. I'm pretty sure they must be including this in their report. I hope that answers your question.
Hello, Ashwini.
Yes, sir.
Nikam sir speaking.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. It was a pleasure and delight to listen to you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Happy that you have grown and developed so nicely, and you are always a very promising student. And
Thank
I'm
you so much, sir.
far ahead in your career. My wishes are there with you. All the best, and thank you for being with us for some for this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, Ashwini. Kangle sir here.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I am very fine. Most of the time we are at the delivery end, but yes, that is, and today we are at the receiving end. And really, we are very happy being at the receiving end. And we are really proud of no, recent 2-3 sessions arranged by Thorwat sir and Nikam sir. And these sessions were really beautiful. Among this, your session was also very beautiful, and we are enjoying a lot. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Special thanks to Akshay sir and Nikam sir for organizing these and for connecting with us actually.
Hello,
Actually,
Ashwini.
Hello,
Akshay,
Hello.
Shah sir here.
hello.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello, Ashwini.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine and listening you for last 1.5 hour. So for me also it is totally different and new topic, which rather I'm in touch because of some corporate governance, etc. But many of the new things you have given knowledge for me. So always I want to study something else new. And yes, and then I know your passion also, because most of the times you are active for your passion. You are doing lot of dance academies and all those things, giving the time for all that what you want. That is really great. Yes, thank you for contributing and all the best.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very
Ash-
much. I think
Hello.
I heard somebody else's voice also, but it
Yes,
broke.
yes, Ashwini. Nikam sir, after I want to ask her some questions.
Okay, no
Shall I
problem.
ask?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
Sure, sure.
Ashwini, I'm Sarnobat madam. I want
Hello,
to
ma'am.
ask you. Yes. Okay. See, I want to ask you, is there any hierarchy among the 3 pillars of sustainability, or are they are equal? So, or any hierarchical order is there?
Okay. So, so the reason that they called it 3 pillars is because if one of those pillars are above the other, there will be an imbalance, right? If they are pillars, they have to have the same importance. So what was happening previously in organizations is the economic pillar was taller than the other pillars, and that's why there was so much imbalance. So now the important thing is to have all of them balanced, so all 3 have the same weightage. No single pillar is bigger than the other pillar. All 3 of them have to be treated in the similar manner. Of course, based on the based on the timing, the weightage may change. For example, if there is an environmental emergency, say like a spill or a blast, environmental blast or something of that sort, what I mean to say is we recently heard of some place having their anaerobic digester actually went through a blast. Okay, there was an explosion. So that's an environmental hazard that happened, environmental crisis. So something like that happens, then that gains momentary importance. But otherwise, in a regular business as usual scenario, all 3 pillars have the same weightage. So there is no hierarchy as such, ma'am. I hope I've answered that question.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir. I think Nikam sir also had some question, no?
Hello, Ashwini.
Yes. Hello, sir.
I was not having any question. I was having all kind of appreciations for you.
Okay. So thank you so much.
Hello, Ashwini.
Really, we
Hello,
are a
sir.
bit. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I think Zadav sir is also speaking.
Yes. Myself,
Yes.
Pramod sir is speaking.
Yes.
I hope you are fine. Actually, I am in hospital due to some injury, but enjoyed last 1.5 hour with very gracefully. This is very good chance to hear you, and I don't want to lost it.
Thank you so much, sir.
For your actually this sustainability subject is my one of the favorite subject, and very good information you are given in this particular session. I really very thankful to our HOD sir, Dr. Akshay Thorwat, and Nikam sir, Professor Nikam sir, for giving this good opportunity to us to enjoy our alumni speeches. That is like Kangle sir said that you are delivering and we are hearing now. That is opposite end, at opposite end. So it is very.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Means a lot. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Best wishes to you.
Thank you, sir. I think Zada sir was my class teacher in the final year.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
On our last day of college, he had taken the entire class. He had given us all a lunch party at his farmhouse. The entire class was at his place. So we remember that, sir. We have a group also on WhatsApp, and we keep discussing those memories.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we have two more questions. How sustainability performance will vary for decentralized versus centralized supply chain? Can someone elaborate what decentralized and centralized is? Actually, I'm not very sure of this term. Not aware of this term actually. Centralized and decentralized. What is the difference between these two? Like supply chain is. Can someone please elaborate? Whose question is this, sir? If we can get some more inputs on this term. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Ashwini.
Yes, sir. What is decentralized and centralized? I'm not very sure about this.
The centralized, there exists a centralized authority which is responsible for the decision making, and the decentralized means there may be different individuals who are involved in that particular decision making process.
Okay. So, okay. First of all, sustainability performance for every organization will be different. That being said, for the same organization in the different years also it will be different because circumstances change. For example, let me give you an example of this year only. Say we are talking about emissions, okay? So since the operations have been closed from March, for that one entire year of the financial year, there was no production, so there was no carbon emission happening. So compared to last year, this year's carbon emissions may be lower just because there was no production happening. So every year there will be a change. So for every kind of supply chain, for every organization, for every particular organization, it is going to be different every year, and every so it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same thing. It's going to vary. If I've got that right, I think that's my answer. And what established models for sustainability reporting exist? Yeah, so we just discussed those 5 sustainability reporting platforms, right? So
yes,
yeah, so the most established platform is the GRI standard reporting because it encompasses everything and addresses a lot of different frameworks and which are easy to map also. So that's why GRI would be the strongest, but there are also other models that we just discussed. So that answers the question. Next is there a difference in any difference between protecting environment and preserving environment? Okay, the first thought that comes to my mind is protecting environment is a very short-term way of looking at it, and preserving environment is long-term. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, if you are talking about protecting environment, it's more of a reactive way of looking at it, and when you say preserving, you're looking at a more proactive way. So that your activities do not have an impact in the future. That is also something you take care of when you talk about preserving. And protecting is when you say कि अभी मेरे इससे अभी कुछ impact नहीं होना चाहिए. This is throughout. Preserving is throughout. Protecting is temporary, which would be considered as a strong sustainability paradigm. Definitely preserving. So yeah. Also, I think we need to stop this notion of protecting and preserving. See, when we do some kind of bad behavior with the environment, we are almost always at the receiving end. And one of the examples is what we are going through right now: the forest fires, the changes in temperature. They are all an impact of what we have been doing for a long time. So in the end, we are the victims of our own wrongdoings. Yeah. Okay, next question is how the sustainability point will be useful in green building sector in the coming future. Oh, that's a great question. So green buildings are sustainable. Okay, green buildings are a business case or a business example of sustainability. They are the very example of how a business can incorporate different aspects of sustainability. So green building will, I think, talk about how you, right from using natural lighting to indoor air quality to using building material which is sustainable. So yes, not in the future, it is actually the present. Sakshi, I hope that has answered your question. So green buildings is the present of sustainability. Yes. Any more questions? Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Sakshi. You told us about most of the time small scale industries are organized. Yes. So what can we do about it? That's a very good question. If you remember, I had mentioned about BRSR, a business responsibility and sustainability reporting. Okay. So it's a new framework that is coming up. The very reason is that they are trying to make it more stringent for the small scale industries also. And a lot of times, small scale industries are suppliers of some big industries. And through the sustainable supply chain model, those big industries can enforce sustainability in these small scale industries. Otherwise, we have this new framework coming up. So environmental compliances and sustainability reporting should get addressed there. I hope that is addressing your question. Sorry, answering your question. What is actually percentage of success of sustainability projects? Percentage of success. Okay, so percentage of success, if we see recently, so 2015 onwards, sustainability related projects have picked up pace. Yeah, and their rate of return can be calculated only after, say, 10 to 15 years. So at least we have to wait till that time. So maybe short term improvements are there. Of course, we see a lot of compliance related improvement happening, but apart from that, I don't think we have completed that timeline where the actual percentage of success can be calculated right now. What are your insights for optimizing the current sustainability framework in India? I think accountability is the most important thing. So every individual in the organization and every organization doesn't become accountable for their actions, optimizing sustainability is going to be a problem. Because to be honest, even now people are writing reports and submitting them as a tick in the box exercise. Yeah, till you don't start using it to actually create value or give inputs back to your process, it is not going to really make any difference. So accountability and implementing whatever is reported is, I think, are two things that are required for optimizing the current framework. Because policy wise, regulation wise, a lot of changes are happening. We have to give it to the organizations like SEBI, MCA's Ministry of Corporate Affairs. These people are actually collaborating and bringing up new good frameworks. But to make their implementation that effective, companies have to step up and take accountability for their actions. And I think they have started doing that because they have started seeing the repercussions of not taking action. You know, they've been sitting on things for a long time and now they're seeing the repercussions. So changes are happening. Definitely. That's why I said it's a good time to be in this field. I would be more than happy to have a lot of you all, being actively involved in this field. And we need to have a subject on, on sustainability. I'd be more than happy to teach something related to this, because I think this insight from an industry does help. When somebody from the industry who has just passed out, like maybe a few years ago, can tell you something like this, it is more reassuring that what you're doing, what you're studying has value. And believe me, it does have value. Yeah. Okay.
In our new curriculum, we have added this particular course. So in final year, last semester, we have this environmental sustainability course.
Great. That is great. I hope you guys enjoy that course as well. You do opt for it, and yes. Okay.
Yes, so thank you very much, Ashwini, for such a nice presentation. And
Thank you so
I
much,
hope similar kind of cooperation in future also. And
Definitely,
we will
definitely.
definitely try to get associated on different platforms for project or for say guest lectures or the webinars, conferences.
Sure.
Thank you very much once again on behalf of department as well as from all members and participants. So thank you very much. And thank you very much all the participants, faculty members and alumni for joining this session. So I conclude that the session is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Stay in touch, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any doubts, anything more that you would like to know, feel free to reach out.
Yes.
Yeah, just 1 minute. I shared the slide in which my details are there. So if someone wants to connect, you all can connect with me there.
So participants, you can note down the details. She has shared her details on the screen. So you can note down all the details. And afterwards also you can get in touch with Ms. Ashwini for any further guidance.
Thank you, everyone. All the best to you all. And thank you all the faculty members for joining. It was great to connect with all of you after so many years.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good day.
Good day.